Kunja Bihari. Jayu Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jam Vishnu Pad Padamamsa Parvajikacharya Astu Tarsati Sushimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jam Vishnu Pad Padamamsa Parvajikacharya Astu Tarsati Sushimad. Shringa Guru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Brahmsiko Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Vira Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jumunamaya Gangamaya Ki Jai. Their Divine Lordship Shri Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish Ki Jai. Their Divine Lordship Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Shrimati Subhadra Ki Jai. Their Divine Lordship Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to all the Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to all the Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to all the Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, Sri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Guru Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the third canto, chapter 28. Lord Kapila describes devotional service. We're on text number 2. And the title today will be sva-dharmā-caraṇaṁ, which means executing one's prescribed duties. So in this particular section of the Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila is going to describe meditation of the Ashtanga Yoga system in detail, and which a yogi can attain liberation without effort. And this is an answer to Devahuti's question, her fourth question, which is in the 25th chapter, 29th verse. So just a summary a little bit about this particular chapter. As I mentioned, it's about Ashtanga Yoga, which ultimately leads to the meditation of Krishna's form, and elucidates the 8 stages of yoga practice: yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Yes. And so it goes deeper, Kapila Dev goes deeper into a very beautiful description of the Lord's form on which we can focus our mind. And that's the dhyana, the meditation. So in this particular verse, though, he's talking about swa-dharma, one's prescribed duties, in relation to our spiritual advancement. And so this text is going to emphasize that our focus shouldn't be on changing our external position, but on how we could use our current position in Krishna's service. And that's the real perfection. It's not the type of work we do, but it's how we connect that work to divine service. So it's going to describe here, according to the Varnashram system, we have these 4 varnas, according to the 3 modes of material nature. And that will be discussed as we go on. So let's dive into the verse. sva-dharmā-caranam śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam daivāl labdhena santoṣa ātmavic-caraṇārcanam sva-dharmā-caranam śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam daivāl labdhena santoṣa ātmavic-caraṇārcanam sva-dharmā-caranam śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam daivāl labdhena santoṣa ātmavic-caraṇārcanam sva-dharmā-ācaraṇaṁ sva-dharmā-ācaraṇaṁ śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam daivāl labdhena santoṣa ātma-vit-caraṇārcanam sva-dharmā-ācaraṇaṁ śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam daivāl labdhena santoṣa ātma-vit-caraṇārcanam. Vaishnavis. Dharmā-caranam śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam daivāl labdhena santoṣa ātma-vit-caraṇārcanam sva-dharmā-caranam śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam daivāl labdhena santoṣa ātma-vit-caraṇācaram. Sva-dharmā-caranam, executing one's prescribed duties. Śaktyā, to the best of one's ability. Vidharmāt, unauthorized duties. Cha, and nivartanam, avoiding. Daivāt, by the grace of the Lord. Labdhena, with what is achieved. Santoṣaḥ, satisfied. Ātma-vit, of the self-realized soul. Caraṇa, the feet. Arcanam, worshipping. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord. And one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. Would you like to repeat? One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord. And one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. Purport. In this verse, there are many important words which could be very elaborately explained, but we shall briefly discuss the important aspects of each. The final statement is ātmavic-caraṇārcanam. Ātma-vit means a self-realized soul or a bona fide spiritual master. Unless one is self-realized and knows what his relationship with the Supersoul is, he cannot be a bona fide spiritual master. Here it is recommended that one should seek out a bona fide spiritual master and surrender unto him, arcanam. For by inquiring from and worshiping him, one can learn spiritual activities. The first recommendation is sva-dharmā-caraṇaṁ. As long as we have this material body, there are various duties prescribed for us. Such duties are divided by a system of 4 social orders: brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, and sudra. These particular duties are mentioned in the Shastra, and particularly in Bhagavad Gita. Sorry, you're not supposed to see that yet, but we'll go on. Sva-dharmā-caraṇaṁ means that one must discharge the prescribed duties of a particular division of society faithfully and to the best of his ability. One should not accept another's duty. If one is born in a particular society or community, he should perform the prescribed duties for that particular division. If, however, one is fortunate enough to transcend the designations of birth in a particular society or community by being elevated to the standard of spiritual identity, then his swa-dharma, or duty, is solely that of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The actual duty of one who is advanced in Krishna consciousness is to serve the Lord. As long as one remains in the bodily concept of life, he may act according to the duties of social convention. But if one is elevated to the spiritual platform, he must simply serve the Supreme Lord. That is the real execution of swa-dharma. So that's the end of the purport. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Giranjana Salakaya Chakshushoonmaditamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Upakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpa Tubhischa Kripasundu Bevacha Patitadam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Jai Pataka Swamini Tinamane Namachara Pradayane Nitya Kripa Padayane Gorakate Damadaya Nagar Gramatarne Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nirasesha Sunyavadi Paschachade Satarine. Okay, so let's go back to the verse again. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. So these are the 2 things Srila Prabhupada pointed out. Is the last part he brought first in the purport, that we should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. And then second, which was the first part, that we should perform our prescribed duties, sva-dharma-ācaraṇam. And this reminded me of a couple verses, one from the Bhagavad Gita, anybody think of one? And then one from the Ishopanishad. So the one in the Bhagavad Gita is 1847. Shreyan sva-dharma vigunaha paradharmat sva-anushtitat svabhava niyatam karma korvanapnoti kilbisham. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So it's encouraging. You don't have to try to become perfect like somebody else, but just be who you are and try to engage that in Krishna consciousness. So that's the beauty. And then Ishopanishad. This is the first mantra. Anybody know that verse? Ishvashamidam sarvam yakincha jagatyam jagat tena chaktena bhujita magrida kasya sva-dharmācaraṇaṁ. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So that's very encouraging also, that, just accept what's given to you. Don't try to be greedy. There's a quota that we all have according to our birth. Just accept it. So these two verses, they present two fundamental principles. The one from the Bhagavad Gita is that it's better to do your natural duty, the swa-dharma, imperfectly than to perform someone else's duty perfectly. So each person has duties according to their nature. And even though it may seem negative, like actions, like Arjuna's like a warrior, violent, it isn't sinful if it's done as service to Krishna. So, and then from the Upanishad we see how everything belongs to Krishna. One should only accept what's allotted as their quota. So that's our understanding that God is the proprietor and he resolves our social conflicts, like labor and capital, like labor versus capital. So everything should be done in divine service. So the main point is that we want to connect these teachings, duty, understanding our duty, and then recognizing that everything's the property of God, and then using it in his service. So that's the main thing. So it's very practical. So we go on to the next section here. In this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the science of how one is liberated. And it's interesting. It's described that when one is liberated, there's no need of distinction whether he's become directly from Krishna Loka or from the material world. So the broader view is that we all come from Krishna Loka. So it doesn't matter if you're going back or you're already there. So this is the point, is that when one forgets Krishna, he's conditioned. But when one remembers Krishna, he's liberated. So this is the point. So it's describing here about a spiritual master. He must be liberated. And it's not negotiable. Actually, there's a book written by Virabahu Maharaj on the spiritual master. What Prabhupada said. And he quotes this purport in this verse about that unless one is a self-realized and knows what is the relationship with the Supersoul, he cannot become a spiritual master. Otherwise, how can you become a leader? If you're not liberated, that's cheating. And then it discusses about different, in that section he quotes a lot of verses, and basically there's 3 levels of devotees, the Kanishta, the Majjhima, and the Uttama. And emphasizes that the Uttamadhikari is the highest devotee, and we should try to take shelter. He should take the role of the spiritual master. And then the metaphors you saw here, got a sneak preview of the blind leading the blind. So it stresses that an unliberated person cannot guide others to liberation, right? So this is the parable of the blind, and it's a painting by this Netherlandish Renaissance artist. Was it Dutch or Netherlands? Is it? Oh, okay. They're Dutch. Not Netherlandisch. Okay. All right. So this is an artist by Peter Bruegel. Peter Bruegel. How do you pronounce it? Bruegel? Wow, you guys know all these biblical terms. Wow. And this was in 1568. And it's interesting, it was on linen, but they used this thing called distemper. It's like a glue. It's not really a paint. And it's on huge, like, they use like on billboards or like on walls. So this is from the Gospel of, anybody else? It's Matthew 15:14. So this is what it says. Let them alone be the blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. So this is what happened. Jesus was addressing the disciples regarding the Pharisees who were religious leaders at that time. And the Pharisees had just criticized Jesus as disciples because they weren't following traditional, like there was supposed to be like this hand washing ritual before they ate. And then Jesus responded by saying how the Pharisees emphasized external rituals while neglecting more important spiritual matters and God's commandments. So this is the metaphor. So the blind leading the blind. It's a way of Jesus saying that the Pharisees, despite being religious teachers, were spiritually blind and therefore unqualified to lead others. So just see how you can see this painting here. How can someone blind lead you in the correct way? But did you know that's in the Vedas also? There's a verse anybody can think of from the Srimad Bhagavatam. You know? Nate vidhu. Is that the one? Yeah. Yeah, nate vidhu sartam gatim hi vishnu drashaya he bahir arta manina andaya tandar apani yamanas te pisha tantram uru damni badha. That's from Prahlad Maharaj. And this is a translation. That's from the 7.531. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage at the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. So this is interesting, huh? So just see the crucial difference between knowledge that leads to liberation and knowledge that keeps one bound. So the blind leading the blind analogy is particularly powerful here because of these reasons here. So blindness, as we saw here, it's not physical blindness, but spiritual blindness. And it's like being unaware of the spiritual world and only interested in the material world. So just your knowledge is restricted within this, as is described, the 4 billion mile limit of the material world. So it's just limited to that. And then the problem is that just as a blind person can't guide another person to safety, a materially attached teacher, he can't lead his students to spiritual freedom. So if we follow such a guidance, then we'll fall into a ditch, which means we'll remain in bondage. So that's the critical point, is that we need real guidance. Someone who can actually see or is liberated. So he must have direct realization of the spiritual world, not just theoretical knowledge. There's hereditary professional teachers, they call them seminal gurus. They're not automatically qualified. So this connects to our liberation, that in order to achieve our goal, we have to be guided by people who know. So it's not just theoretical, academic, or hereditary, but we have to actually get guidance from someone who's liberated. So, and let's see if there's anything for this purport. That's the end of the last purport. So it's interesting how this particular purport in today's verse, it was continued in a Sunday feast lecture, June 1st in 1975 in Honolulu. So the verse was on 3:28:1, but actually Prabhupada, after he quoted the second verse, today's verse, this is what he said. It's very, very interesting. We're continuing the purport. The first step, this is Prabhupada's addition on a Sunday feast lecture. So the first step is given here that sva-dharmā-caraṇaṁ, śaktyā, as far as possible, be situated in your natural life. Natural life means the three modes of material nature. So somebody is affected or infected by some modes of material nature, sattva-guna, rajaguna, tamaguna. So the Shastra has made the path so clear, anyway, that in either of these infection, either sattva-gun, rajagun, tamagun, you can make progress, spiritual life. Because we must be either of these, be in either of these. Just like a train is going on, there's first class, second class, third class. So because the train is going, either you place yourself in the first class compartment or second class, you will go. You will go. It is not that because you're situated in the third class compartment, your train is not going. No, you can go. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita is taught that one can go back home, back to Godhead, in any position, provided he knows how to tackle a situation. So this is a nice metaphor or analogy Srila Prabhupada uses there. You can see in green. And I just had to make a difference here of the different compartments. This is like the third class here. You see, one's prescribed duty. It doesn't matter where you are, because any position, like the train compartments, it heads to the same destination, right? So here's the first class compartment. So the focus shouldn't be on changing our external position, but on how to use our current position in Krishna's service. The real perfection is not the type of work we do, but how we connect that work to Krishna's service. So this is very nicely illustrated in that analogy that Srila Prabhupada gave. Whether you're in the first, second, third, it doesn't matter because you're on the train. So it doesn't matter what your occupation is. It leads you to spiritual perfection if you connect that to Krishna. Okay, so Prabhupada continues in his purport. Swa-dharma will be explained, and it is explained in Bhagavad. So dharma means one may be in goodness, one may be in passion, one may be in darkness, and one may be in mixture. So that is divided into 4 classes of men. So the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. So Bhagavad Gita teaches us that anyone, if he worships the Supreme Personality guided by swa-dharma, by his occupational duty, he also becomes perfect. For example, just like Arjuna, he was a military man, and his swa-dharma, his occupational duty, was to fight. So that fighting capacity, he engaged himself in the service of Krishna, and he became a devotee. Krishna certified, Bhaktosi. What did he do? He did not chant Hare Krishna mantra. Of course, he was chanting Hare Krishna mantra constantly because he was thinking of Krishna. He had no other business than to think of Krishna. But by formality, he did not become a Vaishnava or chanting. But he was always thinking of Krishna. Therefore, he is certified as the foremost yogi. Yoginam api sarvesham. So this is I was inspired by this book I got recently from S.B. Keshava Swami. It's called The Book of the Bhagavata. And he kind of broke this down just for simplicity. So we have the body, which has the head in different forms. So here's the head. And this represents the Brahmana, as we could talk about. Those who inspire, the educators, they provide spiritual guidance. So this is the body. And then we have the arms, which is the kshatriyas, those who manage, they organize, they ensure the upkeep of society. And then we have the stomach, which is the vaishya. Those who engage in business, they provide resources for society. And then the legs, which is the sudra, they provide support for the entire social system. So just a little visual break. So we'll continue with the purport. So that's the trick, how we shall always think of Krishna, even we are engaged in our occupational duty. That will make us perfect. Actually, real swa-dharma is to be attached to Krishna. Because we are part and parcel of Krishna. But because we have got this material body, we have got this bodily conception of life. Therefore, the Vedic conjunction is divided, that one class should be Brahmana, one class should be Kshatriya, one class should be Vaishya, another should be Sudra. In this way, they should cooperate for the ultimate benefit of life. Just like in our body, there is the head, there is the arm, there is the belly, there is the legs. So we are all cooperating for upkeep of the body. Similarly, if either as a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or as a Sudra, we keep in mind that we have to serve Krishna, then in either position, we become perfect. That is confirmed in many places. And then this is the last part of the Prabhupada's extended purport. And one of the places he quotes, Ata pumbir dvijasreshta vanashrama vibhagasaha sanustistasya dharmasya samshirir haritoshanam. In whichever position you may be, if you try to satisfy Krishna according to your capacity, sva-dharmā-caraṇaṁ śaktyā. Here it is said, sva-dharmā-caraṇaṁ śaktyā vidharmāc nivartanam. Vidharma means anti-occupational duty. Ultimately, our occupational duty is to serve Krishna. Anything which does not help me in serving Krishna, if we give it up, and anything which helps me to serve Krishna, if we accept, in that way, if we live, then gradually we become situated in our original constitutional position, eternal servant of God. And that is the perfection of life. It will be taught gradually. So that was nice, huh? Really nice extension of today's purport. So we see Devahuti's question is answered in text 1 to 12. And her question was in the 25th chapter, text number 29. And this is the verse. Yo yoga bhagavat pano nirvanatmam tvayoditaha kirishaha kakti changani yatas tatvava bodhanam. And the translation is, the mystic yoga system, as you have explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is meant for completely ending material existence. Please let me know the nature of that yoga system. How many ways are there by which one can understand in truth that sublime yoga? So this is your question. And in the purports, we'll analyze. Prabhupada mentions in that purport to that verse the process of jnana, hatha, and bhakti. And he breaks down bhakti into the 9 processes of hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. So that's nice. So that's from 25-29. So this is inspired from the Bhagavad Subodhini by Gauranga Darshandas. You guys seen this before, we always have them. Because since we're in the beginning of the chapter, Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service, we'll break it down a little bit here. So this is the first section, 1 to 12. It's talking about the limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. And it's going to be broken down into the definitions and details of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, etc. So that's basically, it's describing that. So that's the ultimate aim, is to understand Krishna through these processes. So that's it. So it's going to go on in the future here, from 13 to 18. It's going to have a description of the Lord's form, how we can perform this meditation. And it's very nicely, it's going to be described, the beauty of the Lord's face, his eyes, his bodily features, his ornaments, his garland, things like that. And then it's going to go on from 19 to 33, the dhyana, meditation on the individual limbs of the Lord. So then they're here to describe more with his lotus feet, and it ends with his beautiful laughter. And then from 34 to 38, it talks about liberation of the yogi and his state of mind. So here, it's going to show his detachment from everything material and his achievement of his real identity. So just see whether we're attached to this material world or we become attached to the spiritual world. And we can only learn that from a liberated soul. And then it ends with 39 to 44. This section is the thought process of the yogi. And this talks about how we should see the Supersoul in all beings, and all beings in the Supersoul. Amazing. So it's beautifully described. So and then I was inspired to go to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. How many are there? Exactly. There's 98%. And I was listening to the class. I don't know if you were here when Prahladananda Swami gave the class. And it was like, what percentage of the Yoga Sutras talks about postures? Do you know? You weren't there? No. Oh, I think they both talked about it a little bit. But it's actually, to be exact, there's only 3 sutras that talk about asana. And it comes to 1.5%, actually, but they round it up to 2% here. So anyway, the 3 verses is 246, 247, 248. And he talks about sthira sukham asanam. Posture should be steady and comfortable. And then prayatna saitila ananta samapatibhyam. By relaxation of effort and meditation on the infinite. And then tato dvandva anabhigataha. Then one is not disturbed by dualities. So just see. So that's significant because it shows that the classical yoga tradition, as systemized by Patanjali, physical postures were a very minor part of the overall system. The focus was more on mental discipline, ethical behavior, and meditative practices. So that shows the contrast between our modern interpreters, who they just emphasize heavily on yogic postures, physical postures. So this is God. So meditation, we're going to talk about that a little bit, about how we meditate as we go on into the chapter, the different parts of Krishna's ornaments, his different parts of his body, and then we just completely absorbed in him, and we engage in that meditation. So, we'll go on. So let's define the 8-limbed yoga system, Ashtanga, based on both systems. So here's Ashtanga yoga. We're going to describe the definition of the 8 limbs, and then we'll see Patanjali's definition and the Bhagavatam's definition. So if we go to Yama, which means the ethical restraints and controls, and Patanjali talks about, non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, celibacy. And then the Bhagavatam, it has the same principles, but it emphasizes these as supporting devotional service. Then we go to the next limb, Niyama, which are the observances. And Patanjali says that this cleanliness, tapas, all these things, even study the scriptures, surrender to God. Talks about that. But in the Bhagavatam, it's similar, but it focuses on just pleasing the Supreme Lord. Then we go to the asanas, which is the postures. then that talks about this being steady and comfortable posture for meditation. That's what Patanjali says. And then the Bhagavatam says to keep the body straight and comfortable for meditation on the Lord. And then the pranayama, which is the breathing. So both systems, they actually talk about this types of breathing, the paraka, kumbhaka, and rechaka, right? Inhalation, retention, and exhalation. And it's the same in the Bhagavatam, but it emphasizes that we control the mind for devotional meditation. And then pratyahara is the essential withdrawal. And Patanjali says withdrawal of the senses from external objects. And then the Bhagavatam says withdrawing senses to focus on the Lord's form. So just see, basically we're getting a particular concentration. So dharana, which is concentration, it's a fixed concentration on a single point, but we focus it on the Lord's form, starting with his feet. And then dhyana, which is meditation, the unbroken flow of concentration. And so it's a continuous meditation on the forms of the Lord. Is it big enough to see? And then samadhi, that's the perfect absorption. And then Patanjali says, complete absorption where only the object of meditation remains, but we say complete absorption in consciousness of the Supreme Lord. So that's that. So, and then this is also inspired by Keshava Swami in his book, Bhagavata. So this just kind of summarizes a little bit everything here. So we have Krishna, and then we will have these different boxes, one detached, attracted, and then matter, you're either detached or attracted. So if you're attached to matter, or detached from matter and detached from Krishna, you're a materialist. But if you're detached and attracted to Krishna, you're a mixed devotee. So if you're attracted to matter, but detached from Krishna, you're an impersonalist. But if you're attracted to matter, or attracted to matter and attracted to Krishna, I think that's wrong. No, I got that messed up, sorry. Pure devotee. Anyway, try to get it right. So you got the point. If you're detracted from Krishna and attached to Krishna, you're a pure devotee. So, I forgot. There's a nice verse I was going to mention here. So anyone whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose religious ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone situated in renunciation that does not lead him to devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be considered dead, although he's breathing. So that's from 325.56. So now, it's mentioned in our studies in this Bhagavatam, in this chapter, that in the current age, Kali Yuga, it's recommended to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So, in this age, it's described it's not suitable. Prabhupada mentions in a purport to the first canto that it's not suitable for realization because the methods in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, it's not possible for us in this age. So therefore we have to perform this Sankirtan Yoga. And it's equally powerful as the other methods. And this is what Lord Chaitanya, he gave us this desire tree to chant. So here, this is a verse from him, Lord Chaitanya, in the Adi Lila 936. Ataivamiya janadulun sabakare yahantatan prema phala deha yare tade. And this is a translation. Therefore, to every man within this universe to accept this Krishna consciousness movement and distribute it everywhere. So it's Adi 396. And in that purport, there's a song by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it goes like this: Anechi asodi mai nispara lagi. So I won't continue. But anyway, what he's saying is that the Sankirtan movement has been introduced by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to dispel the illusion of Maya, by which everyone in this material world thinks himself to be a product of matter, and therefore to have many duties pertaining to the body. Actually, the living entity is not his material body. He is a spirit soul. He has a spiritual need to be eternally blissful and full of knowledge. But unfortunately, he identifies himself with the body, sometimes as a human being, an animal, tree, aquatic, demigod, and so on. Thus, with each change of body, he develops a different type of consciousness with different types of activities. Thus becomes increasingly entangled in material existence, transmigrating perpetually from one body to another, under the spell of Maya or illusion. He does not consider the past or future, but is simply satisfied with the short lifespan that he's gotten for the present. To eradicate this illusion, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has brought the Sankirtan movement, and he requests everyone to accept it and distribute it. A person who is actually a follower of Bhaktivinoda Thakur must immediately accept the request of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by offering respectful obeisances to his lotus feet, and thus beg from him the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. If one is fortunate enough to beg from the Lord this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, his life is successful. So you see, that's like summarizing our verse. First you have to approach a spiritual master, right? Surrender from him, and then engage in devotional service. You have to beg him for this process to go back home, back to Godhead. So that's our verse today. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. So I'd like to end there and open it up for any comments or questions. Yes, Brigupati Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, just as we say, because it's Kali Yuga and people are so fallen and everything, the only method of self-realization is to chant the holy name. People aren't capable of doing something more difficult. So, what's stopping people who are, followers of Patanjali from saying, well, same thing, previously people could follow it like he's presenting in the Yoga Sutras, but because now people are much more agitated and restless and so forth, they have to focus more on the asanas, and some adjustment has to be there. Same thing.
Yeah, but his main focus, what I was trying to bring across in the class, is that Patanjali only had 1.5% on asanas.
What would be your counter-argument to that?
Yeah, so he specified all these activities of celibacy and meditation and doing all these developing these qualities practically of a devotee. But our focus is, okay, you could do that, and we do have devotees that teach yoga, right? But they emphasize and they bring in Krishna consciousness also. So they bring in the chanting of Hare Krishna.
Could they justify the emphasis on asanas, which obviously is more, emphasis on asanas now than previously? Could they justify it in the same way we justify chanting Hare Krishna as, more suitable for people of this age? So they could say, well, yeah, we're following Patanjali, but this is more suitable for people of this age.
Yeah, you could justify anything, but why are you justifying it? Just to become healthy body, or to make it fit for Krishna consciousness? So that's what I think our yoga teachers are trying to bring across, right? You can ask her, she's right here. Just to prove, yeah. So, does that help? Okay. Yes, Rabindranath Prabhu.
Yeah, you were reading about how we should perform one's prescribed duties and not perform somebody else's duties. And
yes.
It says that also in the Bhagavad Gita, even if one should perform one's duties even though they're imperfect, and perform some others' duties even if they're perfect.
Yes.
So if somebody says, well, if I could perform some other duties that are perfect, what's wrong with that?
I guess the point is that it's not your nature. You're an imitator. You're not really satisfied. And we find that people, okay, you have to become a lawyer because you'll have a perfect life, you'll have a nice house, you have a nice wife, kids, and you perform it. And some people do that. They surrender to someone else's ideas, not their own nature. So they go and become a lawyer and they're completely dissatisfied. They're completely unhappy. Some even commit suicide. But if you just follow your nature, he just wants to be an artist, or he wants to be a doctor or a healer or a devotee, what to speak. You know? So that's the point, I think.
So could one say that perfection is so-called perfection?
Yeah, it just...
And that one may, in the beginning, it may seem like it's really nice and everything, but one can't maintain that.
Yeah. At least you won't be happy or satisfied. You won't grow. Can you imagine Arjuna being in the renounced, living under a tree? You can't imagine him. And that's what he wanted to do. He could have performed austerities perfectly, but his nature was to be a warrior. He had to go out there in the battlefield and fight. And that was where he was enlivened. He was dancing on the chariot, shooting those arrows. He was completely in bliss, thinking of Krishna. Someone else had their hand? Yeah.
So how do you know? How do you know when you've achieved as much gain as you're supposed to get, and you're supposed to, be sad, or somebody could take that and just think, well, yeah, I'm just going to work my backside off, and I'm just going to, as much as I get, that's what I'll be satisfied with. How do you understand that sentence?
That's why I quoted the Ishopanishad, Ishavashamidam Sarvam, is that everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota. And one should not accept other things knowing well to whom they belong. See, otherwise you're thinking, I'm Krishna, everything is mine. I should get the best, I should be the best, I should have everything. But that's not, you're just in Maya. You're envious of Krishna. So that's why knowledge is important there. To understand what is everything, what is the use of it. Exactly.
So if you have a spiritual master, you worship him, he'll guide you.
Yes.
What's really necessary and what's not necessary. Otherwise, it's all mental speculation.
Exactly.
And as you said, people encourage you to do something you're not even fit to do. So it merely means having a good authority. And
yes.
The tendency for us in the material world is we have to serve somebody. We serve somebody, your country, your wife, your family, your children. You have to serve somebody. And the point of understanding what your position is and how much gain or loss, that comes through the instruction of the spiritual master.
Jai, thank you. That's the perfect answer. You may hear about everything animate, inanimate, but where are you hearing it from? The spiritual master. Yeah. I think you had your hand up, Arena. Bhakti Arena.
Prabhu, got confused by Srila Prabhupada's analogy of the train with 3 classes coming to the same destination. So I'm understanding he's referencing to 3 gunas. But we know that we cannot just jump from ignorance to transcendence. We need to elevate ourselves to passion and sattva guna to come to the transcendence, to become conscious, become Krishna conscious. And I know I'm understanding he's referencing to varnas, which
yes.
are situated in different gunas, but I'm having a hard time to reconcile it, how we in the 3rd class can reach the destination.
Well, just like the 3rd class cart is connected to the train, it's the same connection as the 1st class cart, right? But they're going to the same destination. The main point is to stay on the train, whether you're a Sudra or a Kshatriya or whatever.
Well, I'm understanding the train analogy to see how it is put in the practicality of, because someone is in the mode of ignorance, they go off to work, to the bar and drink. How do they get to the same destination? They need to become conscious. Where am I missing here?
Well, as Prabhupada says here in the purport, I could read that again. It says here, just like the train is going on, there's first class, second class, third class. So because the train is going, either you place yourself in the first class compartment, and that means your body that you're in, second class, you will go on. And it's not that because you are situated in the third class compartment, your train's not going. No, you can go. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita is taught that one can go back home, back to Godhead, in any position, provided he knows how to tackle the situation. So you may be in the mode of ignorance, but you know that Krishna is God somehow or another, but you're in this position. Or in the mode of passion, like Arjuna. I know I'm in the mode of passion. I like to enjoy, I like to fight. But how can I tackle that situation and think of Krishna, or somehow or another dovetail it to Krishna consciousness? That's the point.
There's no disqualification for one to be able to go and surrender to the Lord. You can be first class, but you're qualified to. You can be qualified. If you're middle, you're still you can be qualified to serve Krishna. And if you're in the lowest rungs of life, that doesn't disqualify you from going forward and serving Krishna.
Exactly.
And becoming a devotee and chanting Hare Krishna, and even become a pure devotee and go back to Godhead.
Exactly. So you see that point now?
Everyone qualified to say.
Yeah.
But as we chanting, I thought we're supposed to elevate our gunas from ignorance to passion. So then we're moving from one car to another, or?
Not this.
They haven't taken a bath for 1 year. Does that disqualify him from coming to Krishna? No. But he has to have the right association, which means if that individual approaches and connects himself with a devotee of the Lord, they can be qualified to go back home, back to Godhead.
You're being dragged by the train. Jai. Well, thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Jai, thank you for your kind attention. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.